So this is What Pros Wear podcast number 4. We have Kyle Ourso from Marucci Sports. On your LinkedIn, it says you're sports marketing, but I know you as the Batman for Marucci. I know you're, in the clubhouse working with these guys on a day-to-day basis. And I would love to kind of just hear it from your perspective. What is your job like? What is your day-to-day? And, who do you enjoy working with?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, thanks for having us on. Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity and follow you guys grow. It's been a lot of fun. So I appreciate giving me this platform to kind of speak a little bit more, and hope we can do a few more of these. But
Definitely.
A typical day-to-day is it's always something different. I think that's what keeps it fun, keeps it lively. Right now, we're kind of wrapping up spring training. Opening day is right around the corner. Spring training is always an interesting time because essentially everyone orders at one time. And you can get it started as early as MLB will allow you with the regulations. You have to be recertified every year and kind of wait and make sure that there's nothing new that gets passed that may change production. So, usually around January 10th, around the 15th, the middle of the month, we can get started, and that leaves us right about 30 days to turn around anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 bats. So, we're trying to get as many as we can. You're not going to get everybody. But you try to your best to make sure that everyone shows up with at least some bats.
You told me a story, and I'd love for you to share it with the audience about Marucci. Maybe like when you guys were on the come up, and a few years back, you were delivering bats to Carlos Beltran, and just talk about that.
Essentially, whenever we started getting some real traction at the major league level is right when Maple was kind of coming out, and the difference between Maple and Ash are, there's a bunch of different things, but one of the more glaring things from the player's perspective is that you can look at a piece of Ash, count the grains, and go, these are the good ones, and these are the BP bats, and these are autograph bats. With Maple being a closed grain wood, you can't really use the grain structure as something that determines what's the good one and what's the bad one. So guys were wanting to switch to Maple because it's harder, it's better performing. But at the same time, they were a little leery going, hey, I know I'm getting 12 and they're not all good. Which ones are the gamers? And at that time, we had a limited wood supply, and just kind of our philosophy, which still is today, that every single bat's a gamer. And, we sent bats to Carlos Beltran. He ordered 12 and he opened up a box of 4, and he called and was, kind of curious, questioning, going, hey, I ordered 12. What's up with 4? And the answer was, well, we only had 4 good ones. When the next load of wood comes, we hope to get the following 8, and we'll send you as the good ones come. And surprised, his answer was more of, wow, thank you guys for identifying what's the good ones and what's the bad ones for me. And it's just a peace of mind thing. It's a comfort thing. It allows guys to know that if they order from us, and whether they're particular about the color or the weight or the model, these things, change like millimeters. So it's the peace of mind knowing if I'm going to order this from Marucci, I know I'm going to get it, and it's going to be exactly the same every time. It's exactly what I want. And it's at that peace of mind, that comfort that, baseball is a very hard, difficult sport. So it's one less thing they have to worry about standing in the box.
To continue down that road, in those early days, one of the things that was interested on our end was we seemed to see a lot of growth through the players, and the players loved your product in those early days. And even now, were guys reaching out to you for bats and, trying to work with you guys, or how exactly does that type of stuff work? Are you reaching out to players, or what's that process?
Well, it just kind of snowballed. Me personally, no, at the time I was 18, 19 years old, freshman at LSU, sophomore at LSU. Jack Marucci was kind of one of the founders, obviously, and he had some relationships with certain players. It was kind of funny, a guy like Ryan Howard, whose brother Chris Howard worked in the athletic administrative office at LSU, which Jack's the head trainer there, said, hey, my younger brother's coming up in the Phillies organization. He's a stud. You guys should send him some bats. And so that's how we picked up Ryan Howard, right? And then that got us to Chase Utley, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And, wow. Player to player, it may not be necessarily, as so many players reaching out. It was really more kind of the clubhouse managers. And just from the 3 founders, Joe Lawrence, Kurt Ainsworth, they both played, as well as Jack Marucci's ties in the athletic world. You knew this player, you knew that player. Kurt played with this guy. Joe played with this guy. Jack was the head athletic trainer at Florida State when Eduardo Perez was there. Eduardo Perez, used to and Jack are still great friends today. Eduardo was up in the big leagues with the Cardinals at the time. He introduced the bats to Albert, and it just kind of seeded out that way.
Albert,
and then it became just a order fulfillment from the clubhouse managers, and then the relationships really started to grow as we continued to provide a good service and a good product.
That's crazy.
When Albert Pujols is hitting, 370 and 40 bombs and 100 and I don't know, 500 RBI a season for like 8 years. I think that's one way to get your name out there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people wanted at the time
insane.
to see what was Albert using it, and it wasn't like I said, it wasn't us going to clubhouse and peddling these things. It was players were inquiring us and finding us, and hey, who is that company? Oh, go talk to so and so. He knows so and so, and it just kind of snowballed from there organically.
Baseball players talk. I was at Houston camp, and basically, honestly, it's not even just Houston. It was everywhere. Just kind of hanging around. I just hear the players talking about the gear so often. I heard Reed Brignac, who's been in the league for a long time, been a ball player for a really long time now on a lot of different teams, and he was talking about his New Balance cleats. He's like, "Yeah, man, you got to try these. Like, you think it's it's impossible as a small company to get in quick." I mean, in baseball, that's the sport to do it because we love to talk about the gear.
No, that's a great point. And a couple things. First, Reed Brignac, what an amazing person, awesome guy from like right here in our backyard. So we have a great relationship with him. But two, I mean, it's kind of like the premise of what pros wear, right? I mean, the gear is so important to them. It affects the game so much. And the bat is really kind of unique. And it may be different than the glove and the batting glove, right? There's no batting glove that's going to make you a better performing hitter. There's no fielding glove that's going to make you a better defender. Now, there's bad ones where the strings pop or they rip and tear that are no good, but there's no good one that's going to make you better. Where a bat is something that with the right service and the right product can really affect your performance. And that's kind of when we started to snowball and grow was. Other companies were offering players $5,000-$10,000 in cash to swing certain bats, and guys are essentially going, I would rather use a better product and have a better service and sign a $25 million a year deal than this $5, $10, $8,000 a year to use something I don't want to use. And so the bat really kind of does separate from a lot of those products. But you're right, it's all about the word of mouth in the clubhouse, and it spreads like wildfire. And it's really, you got the big leagues, obviously, which you see, touch, feel, but it's really kind of snowballing into all of our product lines, and we pay attention to that on the marketing side. Is whether it's a big leaguer comparing shoes like Reed to another, or if it's a dad shopping for an aluminum bat, if you put out a good product, the baseball community is going to find it, and they're going to talk about it, and the word's going to spread. And so, it's different than selling cologne or CDs or other things. I mean, you have to structure your marketing deals and put your emphasis on the product, and that's something that we've always done because we feel that if you come out with a good product, people are going to find it, people are going to talk about it, and then the sales come from there. So that's really a kind of boiled down a little bit of our philosophy down here.
That kind of, that story also leads us into what we kind of really wanted to talk to you about today was the acquisition of Victus. Marucci acquired Victus, maybe it was a month or so ago. And, Victus was they mirrored Marucci in the sense that they had that same type of, bubbling up from the underground, guys talking about it and really putting out a beautiful product, just from the visual standpoint, but also, clearly the bats were performing. So what's the status of that, and why did you buy Victus? Why what do you plan to do with Victus? And just take us down that road.
Yeah, no, it's been great so far. I've known Jared at Victus there for a couple years now. We'd always see each other, Arizona Fall League, spring training, bump into each other. The winter meetings, we always made a point to say hello. Jared, what an awesome guy. What an awesome team of guys from Jared, Ryan, Mike, the whole crew over there. We're always very respectful of what we've done, and it's not that we demand or require a lot of respect from people, but they were always very complimentary, and it was genuine, and like we just kind of saw the same core DNA, attention to quality and the details with those guys, and they were very complimentary of us. We were very complimentary of them. Like I said, we would always connect. And you're right; they started to have just rapid success at the major league level and getting some very high profile players. And we recognize that, hey, this is kind of the next and up and coming brand in the bat business, but it's also a very unique brand. That the name Victus, it's edgier, it's cool, and it can play on different products like backpacks and apparel and eventually batting gloves and fielding gloves and stuff. So it was kind of a way for us to look at like helping corner the major league market between our roster and their roster, but as well have an alternative brand under our umbrella to kind of grow in separate ways and try new things with them that not necessarily Marucci couldn't really get away with. So we love their passion for the actual bat itself, the creativity, the artistic ability that they bring, and their edgier, risk-takier type of feel. So, ultimately, it's great. It helps us corner over 50% of the major league market, which is a goal of ours. They have some amazing superstar players, as do we, and we like the ability to grow together. And so, again, back to the original conversations that we had, it was just kind of sharing ideas. Hey, I saw on Instagram you guys did that. That was really cool. A lot of that back and forth. And then, those guys approached our team about, hey, look, we're looking to take the next step. We've had success at the major league level, but we're looking to take that next step, and we're not really sure what our next move was. And they were shopping some private investment, looking at some other options. And, the light just kind of dawned on Kurt, our CEOs. Why don't we help you guys? Why don't we help you guys grow? Because you guys can learn from our mistakes, and it gives us a bigger footprint, us combined with them in the market. And so we're very fired up about it. We love what they've done on the bat side. Like I said, very mirroring Core's DNAs, but we have a great competitive balance amongst each group. We get along, but we also are trying to one up each other all the time. So we like the back and forth that we have, and it's been a great mesh so far, and we're looking to grow. Obviously, control the wood bat market, but we're looking to take some bigger steps here in the future. So we're very excited about that opportunity.
That's great. I have a question too about Victus and I guess the different product offerings. I know Victus offers a Birch line. Marucci doesn't, at least at this point in time. Why is that, Kyle? Or is there something, in the wood that has kept you guys away?
Yeah, something that we've always kept an eye on. I believe we received one shipment one time. You kind of examine the numbers of what's being used. You can look at the major league market, and from what the league turns into us, it looks about 80% of the market's using maple. Another smaller percentage is using ash, and then a very, very teeny tiny percent of the major league market is using birch. You see a lot more birch at the minor league level. It's a good species of wood. It's very durable. It performs more like maple than an ash would, but it also kind of has that integrity. But it's not quite as performant as maple. And so for us, we looked at an alternative for maple. We kind of settled in on ash because we've had some guys that have used it for a very long time. And honestly, our demand at maple is just so far back ordered that any birch shipment that we got in would just delay our maple shipment. So, for us, as it sits right now, we're predominantly maple. Probably our numbers are more than 95% maple, 5% ash. We fight very hard to keep that 5% in ash happy. Ash is a dying species right now with the beetle that's in the trees up there. It's slowly starting to kind of dwindle away, and I don't know a timetable on how long that's going to be, but there will come a point where there really is no more ash available, and so birch will be the alternative. But I think there's pros and cons to everything. I mean, you talk to a guy like Jonathan Lucroy who swings birch wood that, he told us like, hey, if you guys ever made birch, I'd certainly give it a try, but that's just what I swing. And he likes the way that it just kind of holds together and he can use a bat for a very long time. He feels that, as the surface kind of compacts after batted balls, that it does get a little bit harder, but all the studies that we've done, it's just not as hard as maple. The ball doesn't come off as hard as maple. And so, again, with 95% of our demand being maple, that's just kind of our focus and until the time permits. So Victus does do it. I think they do it very well. You look at the Pro Pack finish that they have. You lay that on top of just about anything, it's going to be hard. So that's just it's a little bit more of a market that they can play in. And like I said, something that we're always keeping an eye on. And whenever the time permits, we will probably shift gears and go in that direction.
I'm amazed at that, at the just the bat markets, huge intricacies. Like the fact that there's a beetle up in the ash forest is like cutting down basically destroying the population of that wood, and then you kind of have to adjust from there as a sport to find another tree to use. Is that what happened when maple came onto the scene? I mean, were people fearing that ash was going to go extinct? That's a really sad thing to hear. That I like to swing ash. That's my preference. But you're telling me that's going to not be an option.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I enjoy working with ash. I think it's a little more forgiving. I think you can look at an ash piece of wood and really identify the defects. And people think that if somebody orders 12 bats from us, that we just go grab 12 pieces of wood, cut them, and those are the bats. No, we may go through 30, 40 different pieces of wood to get 12 good ones. With ash, you can look at it and you kind of, what you see is what you get a little bit, right? You can identify some bad spots but for the most part, if it looks clean, it's going to cut out clean. So that it is like a little bit nicer to work with. To speak as to, when maple became popular, was it because of the fear of losing ash? I really wasn't in the industry at that time, so I can't really speak to that. I think it was more of just an alternative, something different and harder, right? I think Barry Bonds certainly helped escalate that. For the things he was doing with the maple bat. You look at maple, sure. You look at all the species of wood, maple is really kind of the hardest that you can get light enough to make the bats that players want to swing. And there's harder woods like hickory and oak, but you can't get it light enough to make an AP5, 34, 32. So, but yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to ash. I mean, to use a golf analogy, I mean, ash is kind of like your flex shaft and maple is more like the stiff shaft. Guys who swing ash, kind of like as it starts to flake, as we call it in the industry, separate a little bit. It'll kind of put like grooves in the bat a little bit that'll grab the ball, put some backspin on it. Now, the downfall to that is no matter how well you're hitting, it is going to flake to a point where you have to throw the bat away. Manny Ramirez sent us a bat to copy one time, and it was an ash bat. It's one of the most impressive things I have in my office. I love to show people to kind of explain the difference between maple and ash. And he literally hit every single ball like in the size of on the barrel, like the size of a ball and a half. I mean, I don't care if you're hitting off the tee, front toss, live. It doesn't matter. That's impressive. But he eventually wore it out to the point where he had to throw it away. And so guys were getting on those hit streaks, and they're so superstitious, as you know. And they had that bat that was just the perfect one. The weight felt right. It had all the hits in it. They're naming it. They're storing it special. But no matter what, no matter how well they're hitting, how well they're locked in, eventually that bat's going to start to flake, and you got to throw it away and get another one. So with maple, a little bit more durability. If the model's right, if you're hitting it in the right spot, it's going to hold its integrity. Now, you hit it off the end or get jammed a little bit, that it is so hard, it is so rigid that it does rupture. So both bats do break. Maple, you kind of notice a little bit more. But there's definitely pros and cons to both, and I personally like working with ash myself.
Yeah, you were talking about the how oak or something harder like hickory wouldn't be able to get down to a certain weight to be swingable by by the guys for what the guys want. So isn't there some kind of MLB standard coming down now that's grandfathering in some guys for certain bat weights, and then guys going forward can't use that light of a bat? What's the story with that?
No, you're exactly right, and I think that's kind of one of the more difficult areas of production right now. And I'll try to sum it up as best I can. But obviously you saw that back in the 2008, 2009 when maple was really getting popular, the broken bat was just became a thing, right? It's a 9-inning game. Commentators were short of stuff to talk about, and it just steroids were out of the game, and it was just kind of the next thing in baseball that we got to solve this problem. But don't take away from the fact that it really was an issue. Kudos to Major League Baseball for kind of shifting gears and identifying a forestry company known as TICO to kind of regulate this entire project and the bat companies themselves. So they looked at some things. And I think kind of the main issue was kind of the density of some of these bats. I mean, guys were getting these huge barrels. 2.6 is the max. but 2.5-inch barrels. And they were trying to get them 34, 31. Some guys are stretching the rules, trying to get -4s. And there was just kind of no integrity.
That was me.
And me.
When I was in junior league, I was using a -4, and I didn't want anyone looking at my bat. No umpires, nobody. It was like some old, like, rickety copperhead, but the thing was juicy.
Yeah.
Anyways,
so
go ahead.
Guys were always going to try to stretch the rules, right? But I think there was a lot of why bats were breaking is there wasn't that density there. I mean, we're making bats out of fungo wood, just really light pieces of maple. Now, maple is a hard, dense wood, but I mean, the lighter pieces are not going to be nearly as dense as the heavier ones. So, what they did was basically kind of put some earmarks in there and said there was one in 2009, and then again, the main one that we still follow today was in 2011, where essentially, if you had Major League service time before those days, in 2009, if you had service time before 2009, you essentially can order whatever you continue to order, right? You're kind of grandfathered in, keep ordering, we're not going to make you change. I think the Players Union probably had a lot to do with that. Between 2009 2011, that was kind of like your Bryce Harper, Eric Hosmer time. They kind of did a little testing phase, right? And essentially the lightest billet that you could go for our company was like a 86.5 ounce billet. And then fast forward to 2011, those are the rules that we still follow today. It's for us, it's an 88.6 ounce billet. Those are anything lighter than that will identify an LDM bat, right? That's where you see some model numbers, AP5-LDM, low density maple. Anything above that 88.6 threshold would be AP5-M, so that would be a high density piece of maple. So that was multiple years ago, multiple seasons ago. At the time, it wasn't much of an issue because guys were kind of scattered out, and you can use the full spectrum of wood. But as years have passed, seasons have passed. Veterans are working their way out of the game or retiring, even if they shouldn't, like David Ortiz. But some of the guys are moving out, and a lot. It's such a shift to the younger wave in the game. So more and more guys are limited on what they can order. So what it does is a player will call an order and say, "Hey, let me get a AP5 3431," and the answer is really well. If you want an AP5, you want the big barrel bat, you have to get a 3432. So what it did was kind of eliminated you getting a big barrel and a -3. It essentially said, hey, if you want the big barrel bat, you got to get a -2. If the lighter weight is more important to you, then you got to shrink the barrel and go more towards like a CU26 or a smaller profiles like a JJ2, which is a 271 for us. So there's a lot of tinkering that goes on, but essentially everyone's going like, all right, well, let me just get it as light as I can. So everyone's kind of piling into that 88, 89 ounce billet range for us. So, there's some orders that come our way that we can turn around in days, and there's some that take a little over a month, and that's not ideal, but it is kind of the time of year. So it's made it difficult to produce bats, and you kind of have to, we get 2,000 pieces of wood in, a small percentage of them are going to be 88s and 89s. And of that small percentage, then, a smaller percentage of that are going to be good. Some are get thrown out for whatever reason. So it's just a little supply and demand issue, and everyone's kind of piling into the same little bottleneck there. But, luckily we have not an endless supply, but a pretty consistent supply that allows us to kind of schedule it out and be out front and honest with how long orders are going to take and plug them in as the wood comes in. So, I think it's something that Major League Baseball did get right. I mean, pushing those guys into that heavier pieces of wood, you've seen a significant decrease in the not so much broken bats, but the multi-piece failures, right? Where that guy's holding the handle and the piece is torpedoing through the field or back towards the dugout or, God forbid, the stand. So, it's good. I mean, pushing guys to heavier pieces is a harder, denser bat. So, it creates a little bit of its own issues with the log jam there. Everyone wanting essentially the same thing. I mean, if you want a CB15 or an AP5 or a Kevin Kiermaier model or a McCutcheon model, they all essentially have kind of the same barrel, and it's they all kind of have the same delays.
Do you think that now that bats are heavier, do you think it's going to affect like the statistics of the game? And the second part of that question is, do you think it's affecting the cut of bats that guys are ordering? Like, is a certain cut going to be like a 271 because it's harder wood? Is that going to become more prevalent in the game?
I think that the game has a unique way of balancing itself out, right? I mean, we have done some studies with certain players to tinker and try different things. I mean, it's kind of the beauty of the off season is to get guys by here and try this, try that. Something they're a little more reluctant to do during the season, but in the off season, they're willing to give it a whirl. For instance, we took DJ LeMahieu and another guy, Mason Katz, who's in the Cardinals organization. Both guys played at LSU, essentially our backyard. And both of them said, hey, I've always thought about trying a heavier bat. You always tell us about trying a heavier bat. And, it's easy for me as the bat salesman to say, but I don't have to stand in the box and try and hit 98. So, it is it's a tough sell, but, it does work. And so what those guys did was they both had 34-inch bats. We went 34, 31 ounce, 32 ounce, and 32.5 ounce, and just kind of hit live. And without them really knowing what they were using, we were kind of documenting on Flight Scope. We identified essentially that every half ounce heavier they went in the bat, which is essentially a full ounce in the billet. So every half ounce they went in the bat, we noticed an extra 3 to 4 miles an hour on the exit speed, which at the right launch angle could be 12 to 15 feet. Difference between an out and a home run. Now, what we did find is as they got up into like that 34, 32 and a half, their swings were a little bit more erratic, which may probably be indicative of the bat was probably a little too heavy. So it's a nice thing to test. I mean, it's just simple physics, right? I mean, you take a big barrel bat like an AP5 and a JJ2, smaller barrel bat, and they both weigh 34, 32 ounces. Well, the JJ2 with that smaller barrel, you're taking 32 ounces of wood and you're compacting it into a lot smaller surface area. A guy like Troy Tulowitzki who swings a similar type bat, not with us, but another company, is like, he'll tell you, he's like, man, when I'm squaring a ball up, it doesn't matter how big the barrel is. I want to compact that wood into as wound tight as I can, because when I square it up, it's going to go. And so if I were to barely miss it, I'm going to barely miss it either way. So, there's pros and cons to both. Like some guys want the bigger barrel, the longer barrel to have more room for error. But definitely shrinking that barrel size or going heavier in the wood is going to lead to more performance because you're just compacting it into a tighter area. Sorry.
So you talked about some of the pros. You've named a bunch of guys. Can you tell me or tell us what it's like to work with some of those guys, and also what type of alterations and what type of things they have requests for you guys?
Yeah, no, I mean, interesting question. I get that one a lot. First, let me say, I mean, we're very lucky to have some of the relationships that we do, and I think a lot of that stems from, we understand how important these bats are to these guys and the little minute details, and we respect how much that means to them, and I think that our respect of that kind of makes that relationship go a lot easier. I mean, some of the requests we get are ridiculous, but we do it because it's important to the player. And they like that we do some of that. So, I mean, it's different, right? I mean, there's essentially two types of superstitions. There's guys that never change, and there's guys that change all the time. Guys like Rizzo, Freddie Freeman are pretty consistent, right? Freddie's very consistent. I mean, the clubby at this point just says, hey, give me 24. And you just know what that means, right? Black bats, CB15, 34, 32, cup. You just know what you're getting. Consistent. Guys never change. Rizzo's the same way, 34.5, 31.7, but we do it, and it's the same every time, so you can kind of plan for it. Some of the guys that switch though are the unique side of it is the guys that do switch all the times are the ones that usually have the better relationships with, because you're dealing with them more often, and they appreciate you delivering on some of their odd requests, but. I mean, there's different types of changes. McCutcheon was a guy that changed his color all the time. He would always say, man, these kids are always tweeting at me when they buy my bat at Dick's Sporting Goods. Like, I got to keep them chasing, man. I got to keep them honest. So
that's great. Salesman. That's awesome.
Yeah, he would
always. Hear that, everybody? He's here for you.
So, he would change colors a lot. This year he's kind of tinkering with a little bit thinner handle. Just trying to, early in camp say, hey, look, I've always thought about it. Can you send me a few samples? So what we'll do is we'll send, kind of hard to put yourself inside of the guy's mind and know exactly how much thinner. But, we'll go one barely thinner, a good bit thinner, and a lot thinner. Kind of change up the model numbers and let him pick which one. He kind of picked right in the middle. So those are slight modifications, but he's usually pretty good too. I mean, once we kind of get him locked in, like I said, he'll change up colors to depending on how he's feeling, right? Then there's guys that switch weight. Albert Pujols is an interesting case, man. He knows what he wants, man. It's impressive. I mean, I've been working with bats for almost 15 years, 13 years, and I feel like I know him pretty well. But there's a few models that he has, and he orders them a few different ways that I can't pick him up and tell the difference. But I truly believe that he can. And one other thing, I mean, he pretty much has settled in this past season and so far it's this season on the AP5P model. It's essentially a standard AP5 with a little bit thicker neck right around the logo. It's kind of got like an Adrian Beltre type neck to it. So he's pretty much locked in the model. Now what he will do is he'll order them 31.8 ounces and 32.0 ounces. I mean, like a dozen of each. Sometimes it'll be
0.2 ounce difference.
Yeah, sometimes he'll say, hey, give me 8 31.8s and 4 32.0s. I mean, we're not talking about a lot of weight here, but I truly believe that he can take them out of the wrapper and flick them around and know that this one's 31.8 and this is 32.0. So he knows. And depending on how he's feeling or who he's facing, I mean, something so minuscule as 0.2 of an ounce can make a difference in his approach and how he's feeling. So, but he's also very consistent on other things. Model, like I said, he's pretty much locked in. The color, it's usually unfinished handle, black barrel. The cup's usually always the same. So he just kind of goes back and forth on those weights.
We laugh at those sizes, the size difference, but I wonder the physics of it all. I mean, if a 94 mile an hour fastball versus a 97 mile an hour fastball, how much of a difference does that mean to the hitter? It really probably means like a few inches.
Game of inches, right?
So, you know what I mean? 0.2 ounces when you're basically the master chef of hitting. Like this, Albert Pujols is, one of the greatest. So
I would say the greatest right-handed hitter of all time.
Yeah. Manny, though, you got that Manny reference made me kind of remember him, too. So I can't say Pujols
You can make arguments for both, but I think when it's all said and done, Albert may be the greatest right-handed hitter of all time.
I thought it was interesting to hear that you just like the value placed on every piece of wood. I'm sure every company makes great bats. If they're in the major leagues, they make great bats. It's just interesting to hear kind of the finite value of each single bat. And, you're even telling guys now, don't give them away, basically, right? Is that kind of
100%? I mean, David in his 2 seasons ago was chasing 500. So, I mean, I think up to maybe 20 leading up to it. I mean, he was retiring them after every home run. Going in the Hall of Fame rooms, and they're auctioning off. I don't know where they went, but I'm sure they went to great causes. But yeah, it was tough to keep up with. Then in his past season, obviously the last 2 Rob, which felt like he should have given another run. I know Jake agrees with me, but
totally agree.
It was like every monumental game or every monumental hit or home run bats were being retired. So, people think that that's a good thing for us, right? It's good business, and it is. It definitely keeps us busy, the high volume, but they're not easy to make. Like I said earlier, just because somebody orders 12 bats, they think we go grab 12 pieces of wood and that's it. I mean, no, like I said, we may go through 20, 30, sometimes up to 40 pieces of wood to get 12 good ones. And like I said, back about the 88, 89 ounce billets, you get 2,000 pieces of wood in on a shipment. Only so many of them are going to be in that weight range. And of that select few, only so many of those are going to be good. So people think that we just had this endless supply of wood and we just operate at 100% yield. Like, no, that's not the case, man. These things are very hard to make, and especially ones that, like Albert, is so meticulous of 31.8. I mean, if it's 31.5, is it no good? I mean, it's tough. It's tough to get, David Ortiz wanted his bats to weigh 32.3. I mean, it's hard to get 12 bats that all look the same exact model, no defects. And they all weigh 32.3. I mean, that's not easy to do.
Yeah, you can't give away the precious winners. I mean, the gamers you got to just hold them tight.
It is, and like for those guys that do switch models all the time, you bust ass, you overnight stuff. You try to get them something they want, and by the time you get it to them, they may be on to something else, and it's just difficult, trying to keep up with some of those guys.
And then you're like, all right, well,
yeah. Yeah, or they're swinging Victus.
I know my team, where I play wood bat in San Francisco, and the guys don't want to talk about any other brand. They want Marucci's. So I I see it firsthand. These guys are believers too, and they're just getting the bunch of bats that you guys sell. They'll take whatever. So, but Kyle, thanks for coming on, man. Jake, if you have any final thoughts, any questions for Kyle,
that was great. That was
fire
awesome.
it off. But
that was perfect.
Kyle, like I said, really appreciate you coming on and kind of opening up to us. I'm sure the What Pros Wear fiends will enjoy this one.